Hello and welcome to another episode of the Silk and Steel podcast. This is actually my first episode after my YouTube account got reinstated. I'm very honored to start my first show after my return with Einar Tangen, senior fellow from CIGI. Einar, I had you on this show before the war, which now seems like age ago. And you predicted this would happen. You actually told me on this show that
well, yes and no. I mean, I thought, oh well, yeah, he's probably going to go after Iran. I didn't think it would be this serious. I thought he was. I mean, obviously with Epstein files. I mean, and the domestic failures. Not going the way Donald Trump anticipated things. Of course, not having a plan or a clue, it doesn't help. But anyway, I thought he was going to do something for show like the last 12-day war, where he fires some missiles, hits something, proclaims victory, and then, the Iranians fire some, missiles off into a field and everyone goes home. And the reason I thought that is because of exactly what happened. I mean, look where we are. There is no return. we lit the fire and now we can't put it out. And you have this really weird thing where Donald Trump is attempting to get out and he's trying to get everybody he, was mean to to step in. I mean, he's going to the European powers and Japan. Hey, Japan, about surprise, Pearl Harbor. I mean, as I was saying to you before the show, if I described a candidate like Donald Trump becoming president, I mean, people would say, oh, come on, the Simpsons did that. It's not credible that you could say something like a 6-time bankrupt who, 30 women, almost 30 women have accused of groping them, who's had numerous fraud counts, 42 criminal convictions for tax evasion. I mean, it just would people say no.
Einar. America is truly the land of opportunity, man. Everyone got a chance. Everyone have a shot to be the president of the United States.
I understand that, but I mean, it's like I remember talking to a to somebody in the MAGA party, a friend of mine, and he said, "Well, do you feel funny about that?" No, not at all. I mean, he's better at it than they are. He says, "You mean cheating?" Lying things. He says, "Well, you got to use somebody like that to change the system. He's on my side." Okay. Well, I wonder how they're feeling right now. I mean, I was looking at the polls just before I came on, and the base is pretty much still with him. You're in the high 70s for now. They don't really think they don't want troops on the ground. They don't want more money being spent on a war. They don't understand that will be nothing for them except raise gas prices. And then there's the food shock that people aren't really talking enough about. And it's unbelievable. I mean, like you said, I mean, how do you explain some guy who says, well, I could end this war in 2 seconds? Okay, but I need Europe and Japan to send in their destroyers and their minesweepers where I'm not willing to send mine. So they can get shot down and then they could get involved in the war and we can leave, having started this things. I mean, it's just incredible. And, the amount of damage, people keep asking me on these shows, okay, so what's happening? I said, well, it's simple. Donald Trump wants out. He made a huge miscalculation. He was surrounded by Pete Hegseth, lawyer, and the others who are around him would say, yes, boss, yes, boss. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard.
Nick, yeah.
Yeah,
Tulsi Gabbard disappeared. Tulsi Gabbard went under the radar. What happened?
No, they dragged her in front of the Congress. And the first statement she said is, these do not represent my personal opinions. the first question from Congress was, "That's an unusual statement. I've never heard that before. What do you mean by that?" He says, "Well, you check your personal opinions at the door." I mean, yes, that's why we have a national, somebody in charge of national security, so they don't give us opinions. They
and
I thought
JD
that's
Vance.
what. Oh,
JD Vance also disappeared.
Who? Mister, I'm against all foreign wars and things like that. And Trump saying, "Well, JD, JD." But he's out there selling the Kool-Aid on everything else. So how America is going to emerge stronger and better. And then they have,
okay.
What?
Okay, I sorry to interrupt, but I know exactly what you're saying about you think Trump is going to do something about Iran, but you didn't expect we get to like where we are now. So I actually want your take. How did we get here? How the heck did we get here? Like, we know people knew that Iran has the capability of closing the Strait of Hormuz. That's why for the past 7 US presidents, they have never done anything because, they had a plan to go after Iran back in the 1990s. Like General Wesley Clark had said in an interview in 2000, he said, "Oh yeah, I saw, somebody from the Pentagon had told me there was 7 countries in the list. Well, Iran is the last one standing on the list. And there's a reason Iran is the last one standing because it's a bad idea to go after Iran. So how the heck did we get here, Einar?"
Okay, all right. So, this has been in the playbook for a while, but you have to go back to 1996. And there's a guy named Richard Pearl, and he does a study, and he calls it clean break. And what it proposes is it's given to Netanyahu, who's just coming into office, and it says, listen, this diplomacy thing, trying to get along with your neighbors, trying to negotiate a way in which Israel can live peacefully among its Arab neighbors, forget it. What you need to do is weaken every single regime around you, all right? Dominate them, all right? Destabilize them. And then you're king of the hill, because anybody gets a little funny with you, you just do whatever's necessary to stabilize them. So Netanyahu at the time says, "Oh, I wouldn't do that, not me." Anyways, ever since then, every so many years, over the last 30 years, I think maybe more than 15 or 20 times, he's claimed that Iran has either is 2 months or 2 weeks away from having a nuclear bomb. And that's over 30 years. So he's literally the little boy who's crying wolf, and the wolf is Iran. So they're fairly successful in destabilizing the Middle East. We can see that with our help. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. Yes, as you said, you go down the list. If you go down this clean break list, we've basically checked off all the items except one, and that's Iran. So why? What's the big problem with Iran? Well, let's see, 7.5 million Jews in Israel. There's another 2 million Arabs, and then you have 92 million Persians in Iran. Well, they're not all Persians, but you have 92 million people in Iran, and 1,000 miles in between, 1,000 kilometers. I'm sorry. So it's not something where you can hop over the border and blow people apart. They're going to see things coming. You have a significant amount of exposure. They need Big Brother U.S. to help them. And as you pointed out, 7 presidents said, "What, are you crazy?" I mean, the Straits of Hormuz has been studied to death. There's endless military white papers and studies that says, okay, here's the problem with Iran. You go at Iran, they're going to close the Straits of Hormuz, and that's 20% of the world's energy. This is known. This is not something, well, oh, gee, you didn't know that, right? So this has been always a thing. But then enter Donald Trump. Donald Trump is beset with problems domestically. Basically, we know the Epstein files, which is we only have half of them so far, and they're pretty damning. over 1,000 women trafficked. Of course, the FBI says there's no reason to look into any of this. These co-conspirators are so powerful that they bring down the world if they were all prosecuted. So we should just let them go. And obviously he's named in there extensively. And now there's coming out that he was accused of being involved with the rape of multiple minors. And it seems to be a pattern. So given that he was in charge of Miss Teen USA and openly talked about how great it was that he could go into to the dressing rooms and see these pubescent girls kind of taking their clothes off and just kind of stare at them, I don't think anyone should be surprised. So here he has this massive problem, and this would literally end if there's pictures or videotapes or anything like that. That is the end of him. He can claim that it's all fake and it was planted many years ago because they knew he was going to be president. But I think that would be the end of him. Literally, I mean, he's been Teflon for so long. You remember his grab him by the that type of thing. But this small girls, no. Even his base would reject that. He also has his domestic failures. This reindustrialization completely down. I mean, industrial jobs are down in the last year, and I don't mean a little bit. I mean massively.
It's amazing how nobody ever talk about reindustrializing America anymore when the world is being choked off energy. It's amazing how that works.
Yes, I have no energy to run my industry. It's all being taken up by the people who are building these AI data centers, except that seems to be a bit of a Ponzi scheme too. I give you money, based on that you borrow money, and you make orders and you go round and round, but where are the revenues that are going to support all
Are they expecting the Gulf Arab countries to come up with the investment, the hundreds of billions of investment?
Maybe a little tough right now, since the trillions of dollars that the GCC has invested in trying to make the Gulf area a peaceful, safe place to do business and set up, shipping and all this stuff. It's all gone. So who wants to go? I'm sure you can go to Dubai right now and buy condos pretty cheap. Same in Saudi Arabia and things like this. I mean, the expat communities there, I mean, it's going to be really tough. They had invested in sports. It was all about tourism, and all of them are doing it. They, the world's largest airlines are now located in the Middle East. They built huge terminals. All right, they prepared this thing. Saudi Arabia is hosting 3 events over the next 6 years. Huge events, soccer, you name it, all of these things. And it was all based on this idea that, the Middle East is stable. They even made peace with Israel simply because they said, look, we have to diversify economies. We cannot take on Israel because it's backed by the United States. So we'll get friendly with the United States. We'll allow the U.S. to have a base or 2 in our countries, and those will be our shields. Because who's going to attack the U.S., right? That would be insane. How can you attack the most military powerful country in the world who happens to have 5,000 nuclear missiles? So they were thinking that, but because of the attack on Iran, they became these shields became targets, and so Trump thinks he does Venezuela. As far as he's concerned, it's victory. I did it. Look, I'm strong. I can beat the heck out of countries. I can steal their presidents. I can claim on Wikipedia that I'm the president of Venezuela. Do you know he put that on his Wikipedia, that he's president of Venezuela? I don't even know what that thinks. I mean, that and the gold coin. You saw that recently, right? He's going to have the largest gold coin ever, picked by people he just appointed. I'm serious. I'm not joking. And it's going to have his head on it. I mean, that Rushmore, the Peace Prize. Do you sense there's a little bit of ego involved here? Anyway, so he's looking for a diversion. Here's a guy, and we've talked about this before. And in his biographies, he said, I get up every morning and I try to maximize the day. I don't think about yesterday. I don't think about tomorrow. I just think about how to maximize today. So I can see him getting up and every day he says, okay, how do I keep my failed policies, industrial policies and economic stuff off the papers? And how do I keep Epstein off the headlines? And he says, okay, Venezuela. All right. And then Venezuela, oh, that worked out. Let's go after Iran again. That seemed to catch people's attention. Every time you fire a missile at Iran, everyone, all the press dutifully follows and says, oh, whoa, what's going to happen, right? So he does that, but he decides he's convinced by Netanyahu that what this has to do is a decapitation strike, basically what they did in Venezuela, but with killing them instead of kidnapping them. So he does that, but I don't think he understands that the supreme leader is actually he's the Pope and the political leader. He's the second most holy man in the religion. He has charisma. He's somebody who's followed. Not everybody. A lot of unhappy people in Iran, and there were riots, but it wasn't 30,000 killed. It was 3,000 plus. No excuse. Those whatever it was, it should not have happened. You don't want innocent people who are trying to express their dissent. But to the extent they got violent, yeah, you can pretty much be assured that the IRGC, which is the dedicated, and these are soldiers and priests. I'm not priests, but they're holy soldiers. Part of what they do is they are hardcore is Islamic, and they're Muslims, and they really do believe that the great Satan is the U.S. and the little Satan is, of course, Israel. So, for 20 years, they have been preparing for a military attack. They didn't respond when they had the 12-day war as they have now, but they always knew that they had the Straits of Hormuz. They knew that militarily they cannot go toe-to-toe with the U.S. They also had watched the U.S. and knew that this would probably be a decapitation strike, especially after what Israel has been doing to Hamas and other leaders in Lebanon, etc. So they prepared what they called the Mosaic Defense. And what this means is they basically told commanders, in the event that certain things happen, that leadership dies, you're on your own. Here are your assignments. You're free to fire when you want. All right. You have a task. This is your area. That's your area. And you start firing at will based on your own command, not a chain of command. So I don't know how many of these cells they have throughout the country, but people have to understand this is the 17th largest country in the world, both by population and by landmass. They have 3 mountain ranges going through it, which is one of the reasons the Iraq-Iranian war, the Iraqis, despite all the help that the U.S. gave them, were not able to invade Iran because they couldn't get through the darn mountains. It was too hard. Conversely, it was one of the same reasons that Iran was not able to counterattack successfully against Iraq, because their supply lines over those mountains was just as difficult. So, the mountains form a very, very effective barrier to any kind of, land-based assault or anything like that. But they're also perfect to hide, missile launchers, your deep gorges, mountains. It's very, very, very hard to find them. It's even harder to bomb them because it has to be pinpoint. You have to know where they are. And this is huge, huge amounts of land. So they are now in a situation that since they've killed all the leaders, there's no one to talk to. And Donald Trump just said that yesterday. He says, "Oh, well, I'd like to have some sort of things, but I guess I killed everybody I could talk to, including the one that is most striking, and it was done by Israel, supposedly in coordination with the U.S. But there's questions about coordination because Trump said, "Don't destroy the oil assets. Kill all the women and children you want. That's okay. Kill a lot of leaders, but keep the oil assets because that's expensive equipment, and we want it." And I'm not kidding. I mean, you start looking at the way he's framing this war. He wants to save the oil industry, but he doesn't seem to give a damn about the people. So, what was my point? They killed the negotiator. Now, this guy was famous because he was neutral. He was a bridge between the moderates in the Iranian government and the conservatives. He was trusted by both sides, and for 18 years, he's been dealing with the outside world. I mean, he was the person you show up in the conference room, and there he's sitting across from you. You say, hello, how are the kids? Coming, let's get down to this. Over 18 years, you form relationships, even with people where you're on the opposite side of the table. You see each other so often, you know about each other, and there's that kind of connection. And they decided to kill him. And from Israel's point of view, why would Israel do this? If Trump's trying to get out, guess who wants the U.S. to stay? Israel. They're desperately afraid that if the United States leave, they're stuck in an intractable war where they're being held responsible for the death of the religious leader and all his cabinet and the government, hundreds of billions of dollars in damage, and the people who've been killed. They're not going to forget this. This isn't something like, oh, well, I spilled my milk. No, this is, they spilled the blood of my children. 165 schoolgirls blown up. No one can seem to figure out why. Trump is saying, well, who knows who fired it? Well, we do know it was an American rocket. Now it's confirmed. Yeah, well, maybe we did it, but things happen like that, or maybe there was somebody underneath it. They haven't produced any proof. It's just a horrific act of violence. It's terrorism. Terrorism is terrorism, whether it's committed by an individual or a state. And Hamas, I hate to say it, they engaged in terrorist activities. They follow the definition of the Hamas. But now Israel and U.S. have engaged in the same type of thing. So how can you say that they're any different? So right now, the U.S. is stuck in a position. Israel doesn't want them to leave. The U.S. wants to figure a way out, but Iran is not going to stop. I've had significant discussions with people from the Middle East, and they're saying, well, maybe there's some way. I said, how? I mean, the next time that Iran sits across the negotiating table with the United States, they want a U.S. that is severely diminished. They want a U.S. where the dollar contract is the U.S. dollar. Something is ringing. Is that you or me?
That's you. I muted my mic, sir.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. In any event, apologies profusely. They can't stop. They want to weaken the U.S. and they know that in terms of economics, we just passed by the 39 trillion or whatever it is debt. Went to 38 from 38 to 39. And we're in this situation where we need to have dollars buying treasuries, all right, because this is all debt. Right now, $1.3 billion a day in lost oil revenues. Because remember, when oil from the Middle East was being sold, all except the stuff coming out of Iran, which was being sold in renminbi, when it was being sold in US dollars. That was the petrodollar that was created in 1973. And so those dollars those trades go into dollars. The dollars are held generally as treasuries because you don't want to be taking dollars in and out into your currency. I'm not going to take, if I'm Saudi Arabia, I'm not going to get dollars, trade them back into reals, and then have to do another trade into something else. They keep it in US dollars. If that starts to stop, all right, you take away a part of the US dollar hegemony. Then with Iran saying, look, we're only going to work with those countries who are settling their oil deals in renminbi. That's another strike against it, to the extent that people want to do business with them, but they're holding up. They actually write contracts. If you want your ship to go through the Straits of Hormuz, they can, but there's conditions. You cannot be connected to the U.S. or Israel. You have to settle. You show that you're settling your cargo in renminbi, and you have to keep your transponder on. You're not going to get insurance. So it's a very thing. So, who wants to insure ships going through war zones? It just doesn't seem like a real good idea unless you can get the value of the ship. Things, and a lot of these ships, remember, the ships themselves are less valued than the cargoes. What has happened is there are a lot of very old oil tankers that are being used. Traditionally, they would have been in the scrapyard by now. But let me tell you a very interesting story. There's a Swiss group, I can't remember, LM something like this. They're very interesting because they had a meeting with Donald Trump, and then a couple of meetings, and with a very short time, they bid up the market for oil tankers, anyone's. The only thing that they insisted on is they had scrubbers. The scrubbers are necessary so that you can use high sulfur fuel. Well, the fuel coming out of the Middle East is mostly what they call sweet crude. It's very light, all right? You don't need ships that run on dirty fuel, the kind of fuel that you'd get out of Venezuela, okay? And by the way, it's a lot cheaper to run. But these ships were literally going to the scrapyard, and he's almost doubled they bought. This was a group that is the largest container shipping group in the world. And they have gone aggressively after the markets for tankers. Tankers and containers are two different industries. Yes, they go on ships, but they're two different industries. They involve very, very different things, different ports of call and things like that, and they have different kinds of logistics. So it's not like, well, I have a boat and it doesn't matter, I'll take LNG or I'll take containers. No, that's not the way it works. If you're doing energy, you're doing energy, and if you're doing or bulk liquid cargoes versus containers, it's very separate. But they made a huge move, and we're talking billions of dollars in terms of buying. This is a Swiss company, and as I said, there was a couple of meetings at the White House, and all of a sudden, this very, very sudden move. So whether he anticipated, he overheard something, who knows? And maybe he had a glass ball, and he just said, "Oh, I know what's going to happen." But it's turning out to be very lucrative for them, because now shipping rates are going through the roof. It's just any ship that is available that can ship crude from one place to another. But Iran the U.S. keeps saying, "Oh, we're going to take the island," right? Here's a problem. The island doesn't have any oil on it. The island is simply a deep water area where you can load cargoes. The oil comes and the gas comes from the land area. There are some pipes coming in from there's the North Field and the South Field. This is one of the largest LNG not liquefied, it's the largest gas field in the world, and there are processes to liquefy it, because gas is very expensive. Ship it by sea, you need to cool it down to the point where it becomes a liquid, and then you load it into these special ships, and then they keep it cool, and then they go to another port, and then they offload it, and has to be warmed up very slowly so it doesn't go boom, and then it can be fed into the pipelines that go to people's homes or businesses or factories or power plants and things like this. So they have if you take away the island, Donald Trump's usual brilliance is they can't get any revenues. Well, they're charging any company that goes through the Straits of Hormuz money, all right? And I'm sure they're charging a significant amount. So they can make up their revenues lost on one side by simply taxing the other side. And this is probably what's going to happen. Well, but this is going to increase the price of fuel, as whatever they add on top of it, that's going to be the price coming out. And the fact is, you look at the energy market, it's not flexible. It's supply and demand are within a very narrow margin of each other. Otherwise, you start to have price fluctuations. And the big guys who control energy, the oil companies and the producers, they don't like fluctuations. I mean, Saudi Arabia does not want fluctuations. They want to keep it above 76, 77, because they have a lot of expenditures. Many of the other countries, obviously, if you're a producer, you want to keep the price high. They don't want it too high, where it actually depresses global demand, but they feel that there's an appropriate, kind of Goldilocks area, which works for them. So they don't want price fluctuations. So that's why OPEC sets all of these limits. They say, okay, here, if we're aiming at this price, this is what we should be producing, because this is where this is the sweet spot. This is where people continue buying our product, and we can still reap good rewards from it. So you have a situation where now you have massive price spikes, and you don't really have the kind of capacity globally to make it up. So when you take out 20% of the world's oil, I think I don't know if we talked about it. In 1973, OPEC took off between 7 and 9% of the oil in the world. That resulted in a 4 times increase. I think the price was around $12 a barrel. It went up to $48 a barrel. And it resulted in massive stagflation in the United States. A tremendous amount of economic change went on because of that. And then you had a situation where in 1979, and we can see this, the Iranian Revolution took off somewhere between 3 and 5% of the world's oil. And at that point, it doubled the price of oil. So it was 2x. Same thing happened with Ukraine. That was less than the amount of oil that was coming out of Iran back in 79, but it still doubled the price. In some cases, in the short term, the huge spikes, people reacted, you needed to have the energy and things like this. But over time, it was literally, it had a huge effect. Now it kind of equalized. The U.S. had gone to places like India after the Ukraine war and said, hey, you guys buy the oil, and then what do you do? Don't tell us. But actually what happened is they were buying the oil and then selling it to Europe because, as I said, the supply and the demand are kept pretty big. There isn't a lot of extra in the cupboard. So right now, when you start to look at something where 14 to 15 million, double the amount that had in 73, you're really looking at real problems. And the problems aren't just about energy. You need to think about something. Every loaf of bread you buy, it's between 15 and 25% energy. You think, well, how's that being? It's silly. No, fertilizer. 20% of the world's fertilizer comes out of the gas. They use the nitrogen from the gas to make fertilizer. 20% of the world's supply is there. Fertilizer, then I need a tractor. I need, mechanized means to take care of it. I need a pump to run the irrigation. All right, then I need to pick it, then get it to market, logistics. And that might involve going down the road, or it might going across the world. Then if it's there, if it's fresh produce, I need refrigeration. Then it needs to be disseminated to the markets and things like that. And then people go there, and if they use energy to do it, then they take it home. Maybe they bake, do something with it, warm it up, more energy. So there's a significant impact on food, and I've heard quotes anything from 5% to 10% impact on food if this continues, and it's a problem because right now in India, farmers do not have the diesel to run their tractors. It's not a question of buying at a higher price, which they couldn't afford anyways, but there isn't any diesel. You have places in the South Pacific, they spend 25% of their GDP, 25% of their GDP just buying diesel, because they run everything off diesel. Their electricity, their water pumps, their trucks, things. These are islands. They do not have an electrical grid, a centralized one. So they're stuck, with these old-time diesel generators, which are, of course, they pollute a lot, all sorts of bad stuff. And this is true. I mean, Indonesia, I think, it's 16,000 islands, about a little more than half are inhabited. You're not going to set up a centralized electrical grid going out to all these islands. It makes sense. Now, there are alternatives, and they should have been embraced a long time ago, especially in the areas around the equator. Unlimited sunlight, cheap solar. You can literally. I'm involved in a company that does that. They provide. You put up the solar panels. It's connected to something that looks like a car charging port, and you can run your communications, Wi-Fi things, or some sort of microwave that connects you to the internet. You can recharge your phones. You can run the lights in your home, and I don't mean just one home by home. You can set these up as what's called microgrids. So on an island, you could have 2 or 3 of these. And how long it takes to set them up? A couple of hours. So we're not talking about grids in a long period of time. It arrives as cargo in some sort of container. You set it up, you put out the solar panels, you connect it up, and you're ready to go. It can run the pumps for your irrigation. It can recharge batteries for running cars and little tractors and things like this. So it's a complete system in a box. And within 1 to 2 years, 3 years at most, at current prices, probably less than a year, you can pay for it versus what you would have paid for diesel and maintaining the diesel engines and things like this. So it will, in an odd way, push the world to be more green, especially in those areas which depend on diesel. It will change the market for diesel, obviously, which is kind of interesting because, that's why Trump wanted Venezuela. They have lots of dirty oil. I don't know if it's going to be as popular as it once was. Once the diesel markets, there's still, the tarmac and everything like that is made from.
By the way, the Venezuelan oil, because it has high sulfur content, it's almost like tar, and you actually need the type of light sweet oil coming from Middle East to dilute it so they can move in the pipelines. And traditionally, before Trump's kidnapping of Maduro, that was done with Iranian oil. They imported Venezuela imported Iranian oil, they mix it in with the local oil to make it so you will go through the pipes. And another thing you told me about this forced transition, how people use energy. I remember the 70s oil shock actually coincided with a wider adoption of Japanese cars, because the Japanese car then was the most fuel efficient. And so that when yes. yes. And I think something like that will probably we'll probably see something like now with the Chinese EV adoption as well, because I'm so glad I bought a Chinese EV last year.
Well, I mean, you start to think, in an internal combustion engine, I have nothing against them. It's just that they're not efficient, and they have 2/3 more parts than a electric car. So there's 2/3 more things that you have to replace or that can break or whatever. Now, obviously electric cars have issues, especially lithium ones. But now China's come up with these sodium ion batteries. They don't go boom. They have longer and deeper recharge. And in fact, kilo for kilo, they hold much more energy than lithium. And then they can be recharged many more times. And when they come to the end of their time, they're not an environmental hazard. So there's a lot of progress being made, and it's going to continue. I mean, if you start looking at solar costs, solar panels, and how cheap they are, I know that U.S. and Europe don't want to buy cheap panels to make the transition to renewables, and they want to make expensive panels and sell them to themselves. You can do that, but I don't know how you're ahead. In any event, this is an area that's going to continue, and China is doing one other thing, and this is that fusion. They have it. I mean, the Chinese don't put things on their 5-year plan very lightly. In the 15th 5-year plan, they've said that by 2030 we expect to have a working prototype, a commercial prototype of a fusion reactor. The difference between fission and fusion is radioactive. The process creates a lot of radioactivity, 3 Mile Island, Fukushima, things like that. Danger, very dangerous. Fusion, on the other hand, produces nothing but water vapor, and you're splitting an atom, but there's no nuclear half-life that's involved with it. So as a result, you get clean, limitless energy, and there's plenty of water around. They're using a heavy deuterium isotope. I don't want to get into the details, but my point is that changes everything. You don't need oil. Things will move more towards electricity because it's easier to use generate this huge amount of energy and then use that to run your car or whatever, your house, whatever it is that you really need. And with these sodium-ion batteries, now they're at a point where because the amount of power per weight is better, they can now stick them in airplanes. So you could have a personal airplane, maybe it goes 350 kilometers or 600 kilometers, whatever, but it can get you there and back. And you can do the same with your car. They're estimating they can get 1,500 kilometers out of one charge. Wow. Not that you need it, but that is things, and it'll last 4 times longer. Now, those are claims. You don't know that the guns, but it's certainly going to be significantly longer than a lithium battery. And then after that, there will be something else. There's a constant improvement. And China's been, kind of leading the way on applied improvements, taking the knowledge and the science and then putting it into products that people want to buy and that are, value and price-wise very attractive. So, okay, but getting back to Iran and what Trump is doing, there is really no way out. He can declare victory, walk away, but Iran will continue doing what they're doing. They'll continue to lash out at Israel. But this brings up a very, very serious issue. Israel is getting pummeled. They're trying their best to keep the publicity down, but there are things coming out. People are taking pictures, local people taking pictures, and they're posting them on the internet, and it's clear that there's been a significant amount of damage. Now, this has never really happened before in Israel. So at some point, you have to wonder if they think that they cannot protect Tel Aviv, or they're going to run out of missiles. Will they use the nuclear option? This is a country
we haven't even seen a real video of Netanyahu for a while. I mean, there's some AI video of Netanyahu floating around.
He made a speech yesterday.
Okay.
And where he acknowledged that he was not in sync. Well, Donald told me not to bomb him. I bombed him, but I promised not to do it again. And that was
that's when Israel attacked the gas facility, yes, right, in Iran.
I mean, this is one of the few times that I've seen Netanyahu contrite. Oh, yes, Donald. Yes, I remember. Donald said, "Don't bomb them." I thought he said bomb them, so I bombed them. But now I understand he said don't bomb them, so I won't bomb them until I need to bomb them. Anyways, but I mean, this is somebody who's, if he's not in office, he's probably in jail. So where does this go? I'm really, really concerned that he resorts to a nuclear bomb, either some sort of false flag situation to say, oh, we had to use a nuke, and then going to the U.S. and saying, hey, this is serious. You got to help us out. I don't know what the reaction of Donald Trump is.
Even if it doesn't go nuclear, I mean, the fact that right now
they're running out of missiles. They're running out of missiles.
Right now, Donald Trump is the fact that they're sending 2,500 Marines from Okinawa to West Asia. That worries me because Right now, they just sailed through South China Sea. They just went through Strait of Malacca, which means it's gonna take them at least another week to even move to the theater. That means they expect the war to last more than a week from now. And
oh, Carl, don't kid yourself. This is strap yourself in. This is going to be at least 6 months to a year. I mean, they've asked for $200 billion. I mean, doesn't that tell you something? It wasn't for humanitarian aid. Yeah.
That's a part that worries me. I mean, the world can't really wait 6 months. I mean, like right now, like you talk about fertilizers. You talk about the fertilizer. Now it's spring. Now it's planting season. The farmers actually need those fertilizers right now so they can plant their crops for this coming year. And we're going to run out of food. A lot of places going to run out of food if this goes on for 6 months. And it's not. This is why, like, even without it going nuclear, if the Strait of Hormuz get closed for another 6 months, man, this is going to be catastrophic.
Between a recession and a depression, and a global depression is probable. Once you get above the $200 per barrel mark, you start to see severe disruptions. I mean, you're not alone. I've been on Indian TV, and last night was real interesting. The Indians were complaining. He says, "Look, America, you're supposed to be our friend. You've tossed us into the abyss. We don't have fertilizer nor fuel, right, to plant our crops. We're going to starve." And the American response is, "You should be down on your knees thanking us because we're saving you, because in the future something bad could happen." And this was not received well by the Indian side. I mean, the arrogance of saying you should be thanking America. You should be down on your knees. Yeah, there'll be a little disruption, but you should really just be grateful. Your problem is you're not grateful. We're the ones who are carrying the heavy baggage. I mean, these are quotes of what these people were saying, and it was ugly American exposed. Really,
we have the Deputy Secretary of the State giving a speech in Delhi, India, to an Indian audience where he says, United States will not allow India to rise the way that we made them, we allow China. Well, I mean, China's rise has, it's not like the United States made China rise. But anyway, he said, we will not allow India to rise the way that we allow China did, the mistake that we made with China. This is crazy. Like, you are talking to a bunch of Indian elite in the audience in India, and you said, yeah, well, this is official. I, as a person from the U.S. State Department, I am telling you, we will not allow you to rise. I mean, my God.
Yeah, the ugly face of the ugly American has been exposed. But the fact is, the Indian elites, all of their children, or not all, but I would say at least 70, 80% of their children are in the United States. I mean, that's where they're going to school. Many of them have citizenships. Jay Shankar, his son, is an American citizen. He was working at a conservative think tank. He was supposedly connected to the 225 plan. And then there was a hullabaloo, and all of a sudden, Reliance, a big Chinese Indian company, set up a think tank just for Jay Shankar's son. You don't hear much about it, but an event. But these are the difference. You have this global elite, right? And I don't think anyone can miss the fact that the Epstein files make it very clear. And if you start looking at the Panama Papers, you remember that? This is where they exposed all of these families who are hiding their money using this law firm. There's a massive leak of the law firm's files, and it just shows everybody was stashing money. All these politicians, where did they get the money in the first place? Who knows? Nothing was really done about it. A few, token people had to pay some fines and things like that. No one went to jail. Except some people who were deliberately involved in fraud, direct fraud. And then you have the Epstein files, and you find all of these people are connected. I mean, I was shocked. One of my great heroes is this great humanitarian, and it turns out he was palsy-walsy with our friend Epstein. He was trying to get a meeting with an ideologue who's not going to change. I mean, I was stunned to see how they're connected. But I'll tell you something. It made me do some soul searching. I was involved in the politics in the U.S. and in law and investment banking. I met a lot of people. A lot of them very unsavory. Just because they wear a suit doesn't mean they're not criminals. In fact, generally they're just bigger criminals than the ones you see on the street, wearing thug life on their things. And I thought, well, if my name ever came up and they did a search and they say, well, you knew this guy and that guy and this guy, I've known people who've gone to jail, and I would have happily put them there. I served some time in the prosecutor's office when I was an intern in school, and I really liked the idea of punishing people who are taking advantage of the rest of society. But the more I think about it, the smaller the world is at the top, these elites, and how easy it is to just kind of go along. You go to cocktail parties and there's evil people there, and you don't walk over to them and slap them and try to kill them. You just kind of nod and say hello and move on. But you were at the same cocktail party. You know the same people. And this is, when I said I had to reflect, I had to think, the global elites have let the world down. You look at the U.S. right now. You have some very strange configurations. You have Marco Rubio, who's Hispanic, who is basically fronting for this blood and soil group. The people who are saying immigrants are horrible, all right? We need a white Christian America. Well, I don't know if anybody, sat him down and made him look in the mirror. You ain't white and Christian like them. Not in their book. You came from Catholic stock. You're the wrong kind of Christian. And, even though you look light-skinned, you aren't part of us, right? And then you have J.D. Vance, and he's tied into Peter Thiel, Palantir, all of these guys. These are the techno elites, the ones who are always trying to kill your show.
They almost succeeded.
But
they almost succeeded.
Yeah, they're very interested in literally bankrupting the government so that it can be privatized, because they believe it'll be more efficient. And in essence, they will step into the role of being this kind of techno nobility, ruling the earth on behalf of stupid people who don't deserve democracy. And this isn't me talking. This is what they say. All right. Their guy named Yarvin. This is what he preaches. Democracy is bad. It's failed. It's time for the techno lords to take over. And that's on the Republican side. So you have these two groups who really, the Christian white right also is very, very connected to the military industrial establishment. And they want to keep what they have. And then you have the techno lords, and they want a piece of that, soon to be 1.5 trillion.
I understand the grift, how the American system is set up for that. But guys, you don't need to blow up the world for it. You don't need to close the Strait of Hormuz. It's a very simple thing not to do. This is something you don't have to do. They chose to do it.
They're so insulated. This is what I'm trying to say. They're so insulated. They sit around and talk to each other, and they think that they're in the bubble. And that's on one side. Those two want to make the government small enough they can control it, but in different ways. Military-industrial complex just want to sell bombs. They need to have lots of wars. The techno guys just want to reduce the government to bankruptcy so they can take it over. But then you have the Democrats. And you'll notice that there are a number of Democrats who, and you could tell who was going to vote in which direction, depending on how much money they got from AIPAC, the Jewish lobby. Okay, so, it's just straight down the line. You see, you got that. Yes, it didn't matter about the party. It mattered about what you're getting from AIPAC. So, but they represent the corporate interests. The corporate interests want the old U.S. back, the colonial idea. where we kind of sit on top of things. We control countries. Every year or so, we take some poor country and throw it against the wall to show everybody else that if you go against us, bad things are going to happen. But we need markets. We need places to sell stuff. And these are the big traditional businesses, Coca-Cola and all the rest. They don't want global war. They just want to be dominant and be able to sell their stuff. So you have these three groups. What do they have in common? They don't give a damn about the common person. They don't care or anything. These are just cannon fodder for their little squabbles of how they can make more money or for their own interests. And unfortunately, I'd have to say that that's true in most of the areas in the world.
Europe. I understand that. I understand that, this U.S. is just a bunch of collective oligarchies jostling for power. But man, you don't have to close down the Strait of Hormuz. This is a war of choice. The thing is, what I'm really afraid of right now is this is gonna turn out to be like Vietnam, because this is exactly how Vietnam War got started. They send military advisors, and then they send in like a few thousand Marines to Da Nang to secure the airport at Da Nang. Yeah, very, very small goal, right? And then few years later, 500,000 American ground troops are in Vietnam because and all this whole time,
peace through strength.
And the whole time, Pentagon knew the war was not winnable. They knew this was going to be a war of attrition, that they're going to be bogged down. Yet nobody just have the political will to say, okay, let's just cut the losses. Let's just stop.
Carl, who's going to have the political will to say, gee whiz, we're a bunch of idiots. We killed millions of people. We displaced them. We've ruined their country, and we should never have been there. Right? How many leaders do you see coming forward with that kind of vision? If they're coming they're coming from outside the system, not inside the system.
They usually say that about like the war that happened in the past, like 10 years in the past. Then now they will say, the Iraq war is.
They did stupid things before I came. Now I do really stupid things.
That's basically what Trump said. It's like, that war Ukraine, that was Biden. That was Biden's war. Yeah. But now he has his own war.
All those things I said about Iraq and how terrible it was, and how that was the stupidest war in the world, and how Afghanistan was a complete, cluster.
You haven't seen nothing yet.
I'm going to do 10 times better. No, he understands that this war is unpopular. His base is going against him. He's lost the independence. You cannot win an election, even midterm elections. It's the independents who turn against you because you made false promises, and they say, we let the next guy group in. Right or wrong, there's going to be a massive swing, even despite all the attempts to gerrymander. You're already seeing across the United States, Democrats winning in solid red states, solid Republican states, and you see Democrats winning. That's unheard of.
But Einar, the Democrats so far, they decide to be silent on this war. There's very little anti-war opposition right now. Like where are we don't have the kind of the Vietnam War era anti-war movement in U.S. right now, and
that came from a few people. And you do, you have old socialist warriors like what's his name, the guy from Maine, New Hampshire. He's come out and said, this is the stupidest war ever. Why are we doing this? All this type of stuff. He's the only one making sense. But Carl, you want to know how people vote? Look how much money they got from AIPAC.
Yeah.
And there's so many on the Democratic side, and those are the ones who are just using this as political attacks on Trump, but they're not condemning it. They're just sitting back and saying, yeah, this is good for Israel. I represent Israel, I think.
That's really unfortunate.
Ted Cruz, right? You saw Ted Cruz. I wanted to be the best senator for Israel.
What? Well, I mean, that's the sad thing. Like right now, the anti-war voice is coming from likes of Marjorie Greens and Tucker Carlson right now, and while
It's
the
coming
Democrats
from the
are
right wing. It's coming from the
yes,
right wing. How is this possible? I mean,
yes.
yeah, no, well, it's a strong thing. You get isolationists and things like that, but they're saying the right things. I don't necessarily agree with either one of them on a number of their views, but on this, they're absolutely 100% right. No one in America wants a war. We had our fill. We have massive amounts of debt. Wounded vets who live on the streets because they have PTSD and we don't take care of them. The scars are there. We know
every American president since George W. Bush got elected promising peace. George W. Bush was a non-interventionist, ran on a non-interventionist platform. Yet every freaking one of them, after they get in office, all goes back on their promise, all continues the perpetual war. I mean, the system is broken. The system is broken. But
understanding something, Carl, when you become president, it's you think you know something if you're a senator or governor or something like that. You get some briefings and things like this. But when you become president, the first day you're there, or even before, you start to get these briefings. The CIA comes in, they're surrounded by enough brass to build a cannon, all these guys with things, and they come at you one after another, and they start explaining, Mr. President, there are some serious matters that need your attention. You need to know that we have credible threats, and here, there, and everywhere else. And you get this on a daily basis. Remember Obama? Obama came in, he says, I don't trust these guys, but he had no foreign policy experience, and all of a sudden he's out there creating wars as well, and
joining weddings and funerals. Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, it's just, Carl, if you were in the room, these are very serious, intelligent people. Don't believe this cardboard cutouts of people like Pete Hegseth. They would never be allowed in the Oval Office. All right, he was drummed out because he was a drunk and a philanderer and no use. People who come in there are very intelligent. They have masters, PhDs. These are but they have a particular mindset. It's like if you go to a surgeon, right, a chest cutter, he's always going to tell you, we need to operate. All right. If you go to an internist, all right, they'll say, well, maybe we can solve this with medicine. Okay. Whatever your specialty is, of course you go to that because you don't know the other. Right. So for the military, they're always seeing things as threats. And day after day, the first thing you do is you get your briefing in the morning, and it can wear you down. These people are coming at you consistently. You form relationships with them, right? You start to say, well, Bob, get me straight on this. What are we really looking at? Because you, as president, you don't have enough time to actually figure out whether these threats are credible or not. You look at these guys are very, very credible. And I'm not saying they're lying to you. What I'm saying is that it's the information is pushed. It comes up. The information you get as president, all right, has been assembled by a whole pyramid. And each level, they simplify it. But when they simplify it, they put bias on it, their own bias. And that bias leaks all the way up. So that's what you get.
This is what I'm afraid of. Because if you look at the Vietnam War era leadership, there were the whiz kids, McNamara. These are supposed to be the geniuses, and these guys all know, they knew it was a big mistake, yet they still went plow headlong into the Vietnam War.
They thought one more push, and we'll be over the top. We'll get what we need to get.
This is what we're doing right now. This is what U.S. is doing right now. Why are they sending 2,500 Marines to freaking try to seize an island?
Carl,
oh my God!
What are they going to do? This island is just off the coast. It can be bombarded by Iran, right? 2,500 Marines are not going to be able to hold an island in the middle of, enemy territory. I mean, come on.
But Einar, that would just be their excuse to commit more resources.
Exactly.
I mean,
We need a
this is
surge. Remember the surge in Afghanistan? Oh, so Iraq. We
yes,
need a surge. Mr.
yes,
President, we've determined that with the right, if you have the
if we,
stomach for it, we can achieve victory. Our military is great at winning battles. We suck at winning wars. We just have not won any wars lately, except against Grenada. And that's because they didn't have anyone standing up against us except a bunch of work road crews from Cuba.
Panama. Well, U.S. also won against Panama in the 1990s.
Well, and we can pressure them. They're always going to roll over. Do they have any choice? No. And now, and he's already, what I'm hoping is that he thinks that he can move aside, and I don't think he can get away from it. I know that his next diversion is of course Cuba. He set that up even before Ukraine. He did something unprecedented. He named Cuba and said, okay, it's a malign actor in this area. No, he didn't say Cuba is a problem. He said, and it's backed by China and Russia as malign actors. Well, this is significant because even during the Cold War, neither Russia nor China were called out in a white paper, right? No policy paper named them directly. So he's really over the top. And you can tell that his staff, they don't know what they're doing. They have no sense of history, no sense of what's going on. But unfortunately, it doesn't matter what we do. Ask me if I think there's a solution, because I do.
What is the solution? I like to hear it, Einar.
Right. So the solution is that there's no trust between Iran and the U.S. U.S. negotiated two times, and both before the negotiations are in, they attacked Iran. So that's kind of out the door. If you don't have them, you have to have other players. I think BRICS, and finally, I think India realizes that it can continue to vacillate back and forth between this desire to go back to Daddy Trump and have him say, "Oh, you're my wonder child. I love you, Modi," and things like that, or they're going to have to grow a spine and say, if we don't do something, our people are going to starve and we're going to be pushed out of government, because that's what's going to happen. When food goes down, governments change, and not in a pretty way. People are going to go to the streets. So what is the solution? I think the BRICS and hopefully the UN will come together. And it's just not the 5 BRICS. I mean, the BRICS as a total. And they come together and they say, look, we will convene and we will be the guarantors of this. And the US, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And if you don't do that, and this goes back to our previous conversations, we intend to start sanctioning the United States and Israel. There has to be a line drawn. Otherwise, why would Iran give in? If they know that they're continuing to hurt the United States, even if they're hurting their neighbors. I mean, I was talking to somebody from, a bunch of people from the Middle East because of Eid. Eid Mubarak to those out there. I feel bad because it should be a time of celebration, but it isn't.
Happiness, yeah.
So I mean, their economies are destroyed. They put trillions of dollars into, as we were talking about before, trying to make the Middle East a place of doing business and living and things like this, trying to figure out a post-oil economy. And now, basically, I don't know how long it would take to resurrect any kind of things, because the Iranians are not going to forget what's happened to them. And even if they agree to a peace with the United States, there's still going to be radicals who are going to say, look, I'm just going to bide my time, or I'm going to go underground and I'm going to get my revenge. So, the U.S., Israel, it commits the same historical mistakes over and over again. They think that by beating somebody bloody, that they've solved the problem, like in Gaza. All those kids who survive have no parents. I mean, they've seen war. What are the chances they won't be radicalized? And this is happening. Who's taking care of that process? Who is going to reach out to these children to make sure that they think of life in a different way? They won't. They're going to be without parents, without support. And you've in essence made sure that instead of having 30 to 40,000 Hamas in the future, you're going to have 300 to 400,000. And this is the sad tragedy. It's just continuing downward spiral where everyone thinks that force is going to take care of things, and it doesn't.
Yeah, one thing I could be completely wrong in this, but I did observe. So there were two pipelines that was built to bypass the Strait of Hormuz. There was one in UAE, and there's one in Saudi Arabia. Now, Iran has been very quick to shut down the UAE pipeline. They've been attacking the UAE terminal on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz. But so far, Iran hasn't touched the Saudi pipeline yet. So because right now, Saudi is still using their backup pipeline to pipe their oil from their east coast, which is in the Persian Gulf, to their west coast in Red Sea. And now there a lot of oil tankers are now sailing in the Red Sea. And so far, Yemenis has not joined the war to close down the Strait of to close down the Red Sea route yet. I'm hoping this is because China had sent its special envoy to the Middle East to meet with both the GCC and Iran. And I hope there was some deal worked out where Iran is holding off against attacking the Saudi backup pipeline. This is my hope.
Okay, let's hope. But the fact is that there was an attack on one of the largest Saudi oil complexes yesterday, or how many ever it goes. It's hard because of the difference in time. And it was fairly serious. The Saudis said, look, we're going to have to retaliate. Saudi has a problem because they do have a significant number of people of Shia there, and they're completely behind Iran. They're outraged. One of their religious leaders was killed. They see this as solidarity. They're saying, well, they're not attacking us, they're attacking the US, things like that. So they have internal issues. In terms of the pipeline, just keep in mind that there's not enough capacity in that pipeline. And theoretically, they can get it up to 7 million barrels a day. But right now, it's kind of in that 5 million. But it was pumping before. It's not like, oh, it's empty, now we can use it and pump out. It was already pumping oil out that direction, and so was UAE. But they're a lot less. I think around 1.5 million barrels. So the capacity there is not enough to address the underlying thing, which is 21 million barrels a day. And you can cut it down. You can say that demand will diminish because the price goes up, but you're still going to be left with something around anywhere between 9 and 15 million barrels a day deficit in energy. I can't say I'm going to put rocks into my jet and try to fly it on rocks. Right? It doesn't.
Or put rocks in your field, try to grow crops.
You can't replace it. It was just a problem, and that was the way the world was set up. It was a just-in-time delivery. And it's fuel prices, everything is in it, and this is why it is so serious. And I completely agree with you. But the level of stupidity and selfishness that's being displayed by the global elites refusing to come together when they know this is going to be a global catastrophe. I was talking to somebody at a fund, one of the bigger funds in the world, and he said, well, have you explained the situation to him? The economist said, I did. He said, well, what was the response? I said, well, how do we make money off this? Can you imagine? The world is collapsing, and they're trying to figure out how they can make their bonuses bigger, right? They just see this as a game. They're going to undercut the market themselves. They're going to get involved in the financial. They'll borrow money to create leverage so they can even make more money on the bets that they're going to make. And this is exactly what's going on in what is supposed to be our capital markets. These supposed to be responsible people, level-headed people who are concerned about, industry and how the economy works and things like that. No, they're just a bunch of kids with degrees who are figuring out how they can make a bigger bonus this year. And the world, the hell with it. There's not even one scintilla of care about the rest of these people. And they think they're just really slick and smart. They think this is, oh, great, opportunity knocks. Let's really get rich here. Then you have the arms sellers. They're happy. You just had an $18 billion arms order from the Middle East. The question is, I talked to somebody, I said, you expect that order to be filled? We can't give enough rockets to Israel, who are always going to come before you. We don't have enough rockets ourselves. We already blew a lot of that stuff into Ukraine, right? So we don't have it, and the production facilities in the U.S. aren't ramped up now to provide all of this stuff. And Trump had a very contentious meeting with the arms manufacturer group, and he says, "Hey, golden opportunity, get your ass in gear." And they're like, "Well, it's not the way it works, Mr. President. You don't build a factory in 2 weeks." And he's just like, "What's wrong with you? This is a time to make money." So, I mean, but these are the types of things that are going on. I mean, meanwhile, the largest kleptocracy in America is being perpetuated by the president and his family. His son apparently is bought a company for he put a couple of $100 million into it. It's now worth $2 billion, and it was all related to the war. It was a drone company, and and they're handing out contracts to themselves. You saw on TV, Christine Noem, she gave a contract to her assistant's husband, who has a company that's been in existence for a whole 11 days. Do they know anything? No bid contract, 134 million. I mean, you couldn't make this stuff up. I mean, the scale of it.
This kind of stuff was all going on during the Iraq War, by the way. The story I heard about.
That you're talking about, you had Dick Cheney, who was padding things for Halliburton and the old crew, and boy, did he take care of them. But then afterwards, they caught these guys red-handed. They were stealing money from the food budget. There was, just everything was missing. Huge wads of cash. Did anyone actually end up paying for it? Only the American public. So they caught them red-handed and nothing happened. They paid a fine. I think some of them went out of business and things like that. I kind of wonder, where's Eric Prince? He was, I say, the Prince of Darkness. Where is he these days? I mean, he was always, he always had some new wonderkin thing involving getting ex-soldiers to be mercenaries to go around and take. You remember he proposed
that might be next, Einar. That might be next.
Privatize the war.
After the 2,500 Marine fail at holding the island in the Persian Gulf, that might be next. That's might be when Eric Prince comes in with his private military contractors. The Blackwater 2.0.
The problem with that is they did that in Afghanistan. Didn't work, right? I mean, they were paying out all this money. But
it didn't work for the military contractors. They got paid.
They and there were tons of movies about it. This is the regular grunts who were earning peanuts, and then the military contractors are riding around in bulletproof SUVs with all the gear and all the good stuff and being paid $30,000 a month for their expertise. But I mean. It really, what it comes down to is the uncaring attitudes of the elite. They have become too far removed from the people. I mean, I just don't understand it. People are going to starve. Why are you doing this? Why is it
they don't care?
Well,
they don't care.
There are groups that do care. The middle powers They do care. India cares because they're going to get hit hard. Indonesia cares. Malaysia cares. Okay, Brazil cares, and these are hefty size countries. Europe has to care because they're going to get really hit hard. They don't have reserves.
Europe have been screwed left and right by the U.S. policies. I haven't seen them doing.
They want to go back to daddy. I want to daddy. I mean, he's still apologizing for America and saying we just need to stick with the U.S. I mean, he's pathetic. I mean, I put it down to Stockholm syndrome or something like this. But it's getting beyond the politics. To the extent that these politicians will realize that the real chance of regime change, not maybe violent in some cases, but I think mostly the voters will just say, you screwed up, get out. All right, but what alternatives you have? I mean, Tories versus
Einar, the election is in November. We still have freaking 9 months to go. Well, I mean, 8 months. 8 months. I don't think the world has 8 months to wait for the Strait of Hormuz to be open again. This is crazy, man.
Look, I love it, but how do you resolve it? I mean, this is up to Iran. There's no one to talk to in Iran. Why? Because we keep killing everybody who we could talk to. And they have this Mosaic thing where these commanders are holed up wherever they are, and they're just sitting there. They're doing their own thing, and they're not taking phone calls. You'll notice that we were somehow able to locate all of the leaders, right? And we were somehow able to do the same thing to Hamas and Hezbollah and so many other areas. We always seem to know where they are. I'm going to say confidently that those people who are out there on the fringes, holed up, aren't taking phone calls. They might be watching TV or listening to the radio, but they're not taking phone calls. So there's not a command structure in place to say stop. That's why you had the Iranian ambassador to the UN saying, no, we're not targeting our neighbors, civilian,
Saudi Arabia,
Saudi Arabia and everything. He says we wouldn't do that. Well, he wouldn't, but he isn't in charge. No one is in charge. You have IRGC members who are pissed off because the U.S. has done what they always feared. They've killed their leader, not only their leader but their spiritual leader, and they're just operating on themselves. I mean, you remember that movie, Dr. Strangelove, How I Came to Love the Bomb?
Oh, God.
Okay. Well, just imagine the crazy military commander, except you have 1,000 of these spread out all over the country, and there's no line of communication. So, they're not going to pick up the phone because if they do, boom, right? So literally, we created a bad situation. It's very hard to see how you put the genie in the bottle. But if on the television, it's clear that you have a mandate from the middle powers who Iran trusts Russia and China much more than the US and Israel, if you know what I mean, and Brazil and the BRICS come together. They're part of BRICS. They come together and say, hey, listen, if the US doesn't accept these things, all right, we're going to take action against them, right? And at that point, the taco will come into effect. Trump always chickens out when there's no other choice.
I hope the taco comes.
The question is, when are they going to come together? When are they going to come together? I mean, I said the other night, I said, look, you guys are complaining about the war. You know what's happening, all right? But what are you doing about it? Saying the U.S. is uncaring. Oh, well, that really hurts their feelings. No, it didn't. It resulted in some guy saying that you should be on your knees thanking me for doing you a huge favor. And don't bother me about this piddly stuff about how many people are going to die, because I don't care. That was basically his whole thing. I mean, it was so ugly. It was unbelievable. But this is the thing. But you can't sit there and complain. You have to take action. The only action is available to the world today is if the middle powers come together and they say, hey, enough of this. we're all going to suffer unless we do this. At that point, the only thing that Trump recognizes is, of course, a greater power, because he's a bully. So you have to be the bigger bully, and you just say, look, this is what it's going to cost you. We're going to stop all trade with the U.S. Your economy is going to go on. You're going to go down as the worst president in the world, and you will not have your face on Mount Rushmore. You might be pounding rocks on Mount Rushmore. The thing, but here's the terrible thing. In order to do this, the probability is that you have to create off-ramps for two criminals, Netanyahu and Trump and his family. Both of them will want to take a certain amount of a part of their wealth and go somewhere where they won't be immediately killed or prosecuted, because these are two people who are really facing a tremendous amount of exposure for what they've done. So you have a very complex situation. To be the adult in the room, you have to gather the people together and say, let's be realistic. We're not going to punish the U.S. It's nuclear. But we have to separate the personal issues of these two criminals from the national and global issues that we have to settle.
I just don't see how United States would ever swallow its pride and just walk away, because what you're wrong to stop this war. This is a war of survival for Iran. They're fighting existential war.
Absolutely.
So they would, for Iran to come to peace, they would want guarantee of first of Iran's integrity, their government's integrity. So they would want some kind of U.S. withdrawal from West
Absolutely.
Asia, because that's a minimum their requirement. They will probably also demand reparation. I just don't see U.S. ever agree to those terms, because it's even though U.S. could do it, but
we did do it. No, Carl, we did do it. We didn't call reparations. What we said, we give aid. And that's how certain things have been settled in the past. Yeah, I agree. It's never going to be reparations, but if aid can be done, sometimes it can be washed through the UN or whatever the price of peace. But the issue is, what is the price of not making peace? And this is something the world has to wake up to. You're acutely aware of it, Carl, right? You know this is absolutely insane. No one is going to benefit from this. Even people say, oh, well, Russia will benefit because they'll sell more oil, but the global economy will go down, right? This is not good for anybody. So it's time for the powers that be to be adults in the room, come together and just tell the little tantrum boys that, look, it's over. We're not gonna stomach this anymore.
Well, I always tend to be the glass is half full type of guy. So I think at least what we can take away from this is the world order will never be the same. We will never return to like the pre-war order of doing things. I mean, like the U.S. will gonna have to accept time have changed. U.S. can no longer throw its military weight around and force other countries to their knees. That's not how things will work. People can retaliate, and can retaliate in such a way that even United States will feel the hurt. So it's best to just sit down and be reasonable. You just be acting like
reasonable. Those are fighting words. Donald Trump and reasonable. I'm just trying to put those two concepts together. I don't know. Can't quite make the connection there. Maybe you can help me here. When has he ever been reasonable?
On that happy note. On that happy note. Well, I'm trying to end the show on a more positive outlook here.
Okay. Well, no, I do think it is possible. What I said is, you have to arrange the off ramp for Donald Trump. It's personal. If he thinks he's going to jail, he's going to try to he wants a way out. Same with Netanyahu. So I do think that can be arranged. They don't get punished. They should be punished. But, in the grand scheme of things, if we get peace and people can eat, I'd prefer that those two criminals live out their life, however, rather than have, 100,000 people starve to death. And these are the choices you have to make sometimes when you're in power.
Your words to God's ears. I hope I hope you're right. And on that note, thank you very much, Einar, for making your time to speak to us. I always
Anytime.
learn something from you. And
Very little, I'm sure, but anyway, Carl, I'm honored that you have me on the show, especially after being threatened by the powers that be. I still don't understand why they. Apparently, you were one of many shows that were so
maybe
cut.
I'm finally important enough for them to care. This is
No, you've always been important, but the issue is, what I was concerned about is that this is just the tip of the iceberg, that they're going to start going, through the lists and, well, we can't have this one. And, we'll put the old AI on there. If they're using words we don't like, they're out. That's the price of free speech.
I mean, there's a high probability, there was an AI that first removed my channel in the first place.
I'm going to say yes.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone thanks everyone for listening. I had a great time listening to Professor Tangen here. Einar, if people want to reach you, people want to get more of your wisdom, where would they go?
Well, there's very little of that. I'm on 14 shows a week, so I'm not shy, but it's mostly Global South. I sometimes Bloomberg and stuff like that, but it's mostly like Al Jazeera, CGTN, which is the Chinese English nation. But I'm on 50 different channels, so if you're unlucky, you run into me. I do have a Substack, Asia Narratives. Substack, and I do put something in a couple times a week, just more thoughts along what we talked about. But really, it's not necessarily that you read what I do. I just hope that you can convince those who are in a position to do something, that the rational approach is to come together collectively as a world. The multilateral world has two choices. You come together and you say that we're going to make the pie bigger and we're going to cooperate, or you can, just break up in little pieces and go to war with each other. I think the first one is the best one. So I wish everyone good heart, good luck, and may our leaders make the right choice.
And Eid Mubarak, everyone, for people who are celebrating. Thank you, ladies and Einar Tangen, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time. Bye-bye.